Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Counted. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant. Insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parrish, and on today's episode, I have fan favorite Shawn Coleman. Shawn, how's it going, man?
Doing good, Keith. Happy New Year to you. Hope you and your family had a happy and healthy holidays. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for having me on.
Happy New Year to you and yours as well. I say fan favorite, Shawn, because in the Patreon only Slack channel, in our Grits and Grinds Slack channel, there was a request made. They said, we need Shawn Coleman on here. Oh. They love your dulcet tones. Oh. That's my guess. I mean, listen, you have great opinions and analysis of the Grizzlies. You're someone, when you say something, I sit up and listen. There are most I don't do that for. But I definitely value your opinion, and I also like your Southern accent. So
Steven Adams approved. I'll always say that.
That's true. That's true.
My wife thinks they're okay, but if Steven Adams approves of it, I'm going to take that all day. But I appreciate the kind words to everybody in the chat and from you as well, Keith. That means
you went semi-viral as Steven Adams asked, like, where are you from, mate? Like, what's
that's correct.
Incredible. Well, Shawn, the Grizzlies won a game, which is great. We don't take that for granted because that was just their third home win. 3 home wins on the season. The Bally's broadcast threw this stat out, which I wasn't aware of. Like, I understood the gist of it. I was aware of the gist, but like last night on Tuesday night against the Spurs, that was the 6th time all season the Grizzlies had been ahead after the third quarter. That's just horrible. But anyways, Shawn, we won. Morant got his dunk over Wembanyama. What were your thoughts and feelings about this victory?
To your point, it was ugly, but it was a needed win. It's a win. It's good, but it also is one of those wins to where, listen, even if John Morant is limited right now, certainly hope the knee's okay. Hope he's getting better from illness. But when you look at those two rosters, when you look at the Grizzlies and you look at the Spurs, if you want to make a case that Wemby is among the top 3 players on the court at any one time, okay, that's fine. But clearly, to me, the best 3 players on that court between the two teams last night were Ja, Bane, and Jaren. And even with that being said, at times Ja played like it, at times Bane played like it. Jaren played like a big 7 stock, 7 boards. But the fact that our offense struggled like it did, this was a game in which it wasn't a complete 48 minutes, Keith. It was basically like, a snippet of that came to a total of 10 minutes, the end of the first half, a couple of times during the third quarter, where we thankfully had enough 3-point shooting and overall offense to get the job done. But just, what stands out to me for this Grizzlies team is that, and I'm sure we'll get into this a bit later on, for us to win at the pace that we've got to win, is our offense going to be able to stay consistent enough for us to do that? And last night didn't give a whole lot of faith that's going to be the case.
Yeah, the offense continues being a hilarious struggle. I like how you were like, maybe Ja's still struggling with some injury or sickness stuff. There's been so many times this year where I'm watching our guys and I'm like, I kind of hope he's actually hurt.
Yeah.
Which is not a good place to be. Like Tillman hadn't played in a while, but Tillman had that stretch earlier when he was playing. We were like, man, I hope he has a secret injury because he doesn't look right. And there's just been so many. Drew Hill on the Daily Memphian had like some article come out yesterday talking about how messed up Marcus Smart's hand was. When I watched the games, I'm like, well, I hope his hand is messed up. Because he's been terrible. I was thinking this, like, he's been terrible the last couple games. I'm not forgetting the sacrifice he made hurting that hand in the amazing win over the Pelicans. But like, Shawn, if Dylan Brooks had the 2 games that Marcus Smart just had, people would be going nuts again. Yeah. I mean, it worked out. We won one of them.
Correct. And it just like I say, it just, when we were going through that 4-game winning streak with Ja, you started to kind of see, what could we do? What about this team could stand out to allow for us to start playing at the level that we need to win at the frequency that we need to really make a run at the playoffs. Those 4 games were fun. The offense showed some life. But then we had this sickness come through the roster. We played the Nuggets, the Clippers, and the Kings back-to-back-to-back, 3 playoff caliber teams, and our defense just goes to shreds. Like, we may have stopped them a little bit, but it was nothing effective at all. So now you're left here wondering, okay, where is the part of our team going to be? What part of our team is going to play to the level that it needs to consistently for us to win at the 600 winning percentage pace we're going to need for the rest of the season to make the playoffs? A game like last night really puts that thought into question.
Yeah. So in the 4-game win streak, the offense was clicking at a much better rate. They were scoring. They had all those points in the paint. The first 3 games of that, they were over 50% from the field as a team. However, it wasn't totally sustainable because, as we note with that funny stat about only leading after the 3rd quarter 6 times, they only led after the 3rd quarter in 1 of those games. So like it still was coming in fits and spurts and bursts. And like the thing you saw against the Spurs, it continues to be just the shooting is not there. Right. And this is one where I don't know what you lay at the feet of the players versus the coaches versus the overall team strategy. Like, the Grizzlies win because you hold the Spurs to 98 points. That's the 3rd time this year the Grizzlies have held their opponent to under 100 points. Of course, they're 3-0 in those games, but the Grizzlies' own offense, they're just bricking threes in every game. And they have this long streak. I meant to look this up, but they've made 10 or more 3-pointers in 14 consecutive games, which in the history of the Grizzlies, that's a really good streak. They're not making them at a good percentage in that 14-game streak. They're shooting 34%. And it, like, so I keep saying they're spamming threes. They're just like, I hope this goes in. And like the 1st quarter, the 2nd quarter, the 3rd quarter, like the 3rd quarter, a couple went in, but the whole time it's just like, this is a mess. And we have Luke Kennard back, and Luke Kennard, all right, he goes 3 out of 7 from 3 on Tuesday night against the Spurs. In the previous game, he made 5 out of 8. So Luke, 8 out of 15 the last 2 games. Doesn't matter. The overall team percentage is still hideous. So I don't know if it's as simple as being like, guys, we need to attack the basket relentlessly. Like, your first thought can't be, and this is different than Taylor Jenkins's old let that MF fly strategy. Like, I don't know. It, like, is taking the best or the first open 3, which has always been my understanding of what the coaching staff wanted the Grizzlies to do. Do they need to tweak that at all to just be like, hey guys, we're not spamming threes. We're spamming driving towards the basket every single time.
Well, and I think when it comes down to it, I can understand why Taylor Jenkins may want for that to still be the philosophy, with the theoretical shooting that's there, Bain and Kennard and Santi and others, that's fine. But we're now a third of the way through the season, Keith, and with the fact that even without John Morant, even with him coming back, we're still seeing clear inconsistency on the offense. Instead of prioritizing the best look from 3, we've just got to start prioritizing the best shot overall. Because to your point, double-digit threes is wonderful. But the point is that you've got to be able to make sure that they're high percentage looks. They're the best shot that you can take. But right now, this Grizzlies team, you would think that the alternate would be going into the lane or going into the 2-point area and being able to hit shots. But we're bottom 5 in the league right now in terms of 2-point shots. It's kind of gone up since John Morant's return, but it just feels like that this default mode of just taking a 3 that seems to be there, is fine. But if you're not hitting them, you've got to do more work, which to your point is on the coaching staff to coming up with better strategies and schemes to getting that open look inside the arc, because that's what's going to allow for us to do that. Even with John Morant back, we've got to build up our confidence in knowing that with the extra pass or the extra look, we can start to get those 2s to balance out the 3s, or we've got to start hitting corner 3s. One of the biggest things that stands out to me about this offense, the looks are there from corners, but Jaren, Santi, others, we can't hit them. We can't hit them.
I didn't update this stat from last night, but before last night, the Grizzlies were shooting 32.5% on corner three-pointers, which seems impossible. And unfortunately, like the other team knows that the Grizzlies are not a threat to shoot three-pointers. They're like, hey, Marcus Smart, you want to shoot a three? Cool. Bismack Biyombo, I'm not going to guard you. Honestly, Jaren, you want to shoot a three? It's better than you driving. So we're seeing teams pack it in, lay off, and like if Wembanyama's in the paint, I understand it's not that easy to score in there. So I don't totally know exactly what the solution is. Too much of it is could Desmond Bane and John Morant save us, please? Like that'd be great. I mean, Dez kind of did. He was 9 out of 11 last night on 2-pointers, so he was just driving nonstop. Dez got the idea. He did see his streak end of consecutive games with 3 or more made threes. Only had 2 made threes, but I don't care. It was a great game from Desmond on the offensive end, 24 points on 17 field goal attempts. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the answer is going to be. I do know I cringe whenever the Grizzlies shoot 3-pointers. And I don't know if that's just like now my Pavlovian trained response of like, I feel kind of sick. One's like, oh, this is going up. Oh no.
Well, and to your point though, there's a solution there, right? Like Ja, you see it. Like before December 19th, I think we were hitting shots in the restricted area. We were taking 23, 24 shots a game, hitting like 58% of them, which was abysmal. But then since Ja's been back, we're hitting 66 of them, okay, or 66% of them. Okay, that's getting more towards league average. But Ja and Dez are a very good finishing duo in the backcourt. Feature them more, you can get it done. What this team needs, and why I think center is becoming the clear upgrade where we need someone who's efficient there. And Brandon Clark would be perfect. You don't know what you're going to get from him, though. So if we're going to make a move at the deadline, not to change subjects or anything, but if we're going to make a move at the deadline, I think that a priority in that center is someone that is comfortable 6, 7, 8 shots a game and is also making them at a clip of around 65 to 70%. Those options are out there, but getting an inside option that can at least at some sort of way be efficient at twos, I think that can help the offense out tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, Bismack, all right, bless his heart. Like, he had, for him, pretty good game, but it's like the bar for success on being happy with what Bismack provides. Like he had a few blocks in this one. You get 8 rebounds. He actually scored the basket a couple times, but like he also has times where he catches it and just like misses the layup. But like that's his thing. Like there were fans of other teams that I've monitored on social media when they had Bismack Biyombo, they had a missed bunnies counter for like just keeping track of Bismack dropping passes and or missing shots. Like Bismack is what he is. And they're like, I guess that's our better option. I do think it's intriguing, and this might lead up to trade discussions or something. I find the Xavier Tillman DMPs intriguing. Like at the very least, Xavier looks at the basket. At the very least, he is a willing shooter of the floater. And he will, and he's tried, adding it to his arsenal. He'll shoot 3-pointers and just that tiny bit of spacing. Although then you run into the issue where the other team's not going to guard him. Probably they're still going to pack the paint. But I've been intrigued since Luke Kennard was healthy with the decision to go Bismack only at the center position. What do you make of that?
Tillman should be playing. Like Tillman should be a priority right now over Bismack Biyombo, because I think that Tillman, listen, you may not have as much screens, you may not have as much rim protection, but for this team right now, they need more versatility than they need rim protection, in my opinion. I think that with Jaren, I think that with others, you can get what you need in terms of at the rim. I know that we're guarding the rim well, but if you want to use Bismack for, 10 minutes or so a game when you truly feel that you need it, that's fine. But Tillman, I understand right now what he could be remains more than what he actually has been this season. He's not solving the issue of scoring the twos like we need for it to be, but you do know that at the very least for stretches, he can give you some decent defense out on wings, or he's more comfortable out on the perimeter. He can make good, smart passes with the basketball, and I do think also that he's more adept to being able to know how to play with Ja and others with their playmaking ability and being able to finish around the rim. I think that if you give him consistent playing time, he'll figure out how to make that at least passable. So right now, Xavier Tillman should be starting. Xavier Tillman should clearly be our number one option at the center position. I'm not saying that's a great thing. I'm not saying that's something that prevents you from going out and getting a center, but he clearly should be playing over Bismack Biyombo at this point.
So the reason I say it's intriguing that he's been getting these DMPs is that makes you feel like when you look at the roster situation, you look at possibly wanting to upgrade at the center spot. You look at Vince Williams Jr., who demands a regular roster spot as we run into this, being 50 games active limitation on his two-way spot. Like Vince Williams Jr. has claimed this role that he deserves, and like we need to play him over all the other wing options. And so you look at the roster and you say, okay, X is on an expiring contract, so maybe he's someone who has a little bit of value to another team, but also like he's a guy I understand not getting an extension done because the center market is always depressed where these guys don't get paid. Backup centers do not get paid in the NBA. So you're not going to be like, yeah, we'll pay you $6 to $8 million a year with the luxury tax concerns the Grizzlies are going to have going forward. It makes sense not to extend him. So they might value just keeping him around. He's a good guy to have as your 12th guy, 10th guy, starting a pinch guy. But like the fact that they haven't played him just kind of raises the eyebrow. Like, oh, are we actually getting some traction on a team that might want him and might want like Conchar, and that way you free up a roster spot. And then of course, Bismack has that big salary. Like you're not going to trade Bismack and X. So my thought would be you use the matching salary of Bismack and then throw somebody else in and you see what you can get for that. But like, I don't know. It's all swirling in my head about that trade target. Do you have a brief aside? I haven't done my deep dive on trade targets yet. But are there any things that you've like kind of penciled in your brain of like, you know what? I wouldn't mind if we went after this guy.
Yeah. Parker Fleming, Stowe Stakalidis, he did a great dive yesterday. But, I think if the Grizzlies are going to make a move, if they're going to make a significant move, it would be for the center position at the trade deadline. Now, listen, if you want to go throw a couple of seconds and maybe go get an Andre Drummond for this year, that's fine. But I would rather go get someone who at the very least you could, have as an option moving forward. Because when you look at Steven Adams, when you look at Brandon Clark, do you feel that either of those guys with the $12.5 million that each of them are owed roughly in that area, Adams next year, Clark over the next 3 years, do you think they're going to get back to where they once were? Maybe, but is it a guarantee? No, probably not. So if you could use one of their salaries along with maybe a John Conchar or, one of your wings, if you can match those up and maybe get in the market for like a Jakob Poeltl or a Clint Capella or, a Wendell Carter Jr. Wendell Carter's probably not going to happen. But one of those guys, potentially it could make sense. I don't necessarily know if Nick Claxton makes that much sense because he probably is going to get that 5-year, $100 million deal. But, in that case, maybe you can go to get a Jared Allen. I'm becoming more open to the idea of getting a center who's making $20 million a year if you use one of Adams or Clark plus your other, $3 to $5 million salaries, multiple of them to make it happen. Because with that, you get the long-term answer that you need next to Jaren. You also are clearing roster spots and future money that you could use to get Vince Williams. And in my opinion, when it comes to this 24 draft class, include that 24 pick with that, because I think that's at least intriguing to teams that are wanting to rebuild. And for a center market, I think that will make up a good part of the package for a center. And the last thing I'll say to getting those guys, it's going to be easier, in my opinion, for the Grizzlies roster and with our assets to pay a reasonable cost to get a significant impact center than it's going to be to put everything together to try to go get a wing at this point in time. So I think center is the position, and I would prioritize going to get someone that can help this year and beyond rather than just someone this year.
Yeah. I've seen people mention Nick Claxton. My understanding of Nick Claxton is he's a rather subpar rebounder. Yeah, and I'm kind of like, nope. I don't like at this point, if we're making a trade, like I want someone who complements Jaren ideally. And that's going to mean preferably can shoot a little bit. That's going to complement John Morant and the rest of the roster, can shoot a little bit, but also needs to be like above average to preferably very, very good at rebounding. And so Nick Claxton does not fit that bill. I disagree with you. And I've seen a lot of people say the same thing that you're saying. I don't think under hardly any circumstance trade the Grizzlies 2024 pick for a big. Like there's not a name I've heard mentioned where I would include that 2024 pick. I understand the criticism I understand the line of thought. We have too many young guys. I agree with you. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of some of the young guys I have, Shawn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind adding a new young guy, but it's not going to be like, oh, I already have Jake LaRavia. I'm not adding a lottery pick. No, sir. I would like my scratcher, please. And maybe whatever happens next year, like I'm aware of Michael Porter Jr. and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and other great, like, hey, that was the 10th pick in there. Jalen Williams, if I'm just going to keep naming Thunder players. Like, hey, that guy was the 10th, 11th pick. Guess what? The Grizzlies have a really, really strong chance at having the 10th or 11th pick this year. For me, I have no PTSD with Zaire Williams. Give me another 10 or 11 or 12 pick, and maybe something happens. That's how teams work. Again, the strategy that I think I've criticized a ton of the last 2 years, like the strategy of replenishing your roster with draft picks is sound on the one sense. With getting rid of good players to do that, I call that unsound. Getting rid of maybe the young guys who haven't panned out, I'm fine with. So like, there's no center out there where I would be comfortable with trading that first round pick. I still value, let's hope maybe we get lucky. My thing, and this might be more controversial, and I might need to make this a whole different episode. I can table this. For me, it's what's the best center I can get? Here's the question I think we should be asking ourselves. What's the best center I can get for Luke Kennard and or Marcus Smart?
Okay.
I think like that, if I don't have to attach anything, that's what I'm interested in. And I know the idea of like, we can't lose Luke Kennard. We're terrible at shooting. Well, guess what? We have John Morant, Desmond Bane. Those are our guards. Those are our top guards. We're talking about a bench shooter. I need a starting five. So I think you might be able to replace like Luke Kennard down the line. And especially when you have Marcus Smart on the team still, like we're talking about fourth guards here. Like, and I would rather maybe hold out hope that Steven Adams and Brandon Clark can rehabilitate for next year. So I want to maybe hang on to those salaries. I look at the salaries on the roster. I don't anticipate them trading Marcus Smart. Like that's that's the whatever. They have too much skin in the game. That's a bad look. Of course the season has gone horribly. But I would be considering like, who's a maybe a starting caliber wing and or center I could trade Marcus Smart for nothing. Matt Hardlicka on his Substack or his Patreon, he suggested like a Wiggins for Marcus Smart trade just because it saves the Warriors a ton of money. I'm in. Call it in. Let's do it. Like Wiggins makes more sense. Like so far, Marcus Smart has not been additive to this roster. Maybe he will be at some point, but for me, it's all like, hey, could I trade Luke Kennard for Wendell Carter Jr.? How close are we? Exactly. Can I trade Luke Kennard for Clint Capella? How close are we? Oh, by the way, you have to take John Conchar because I need his roster spot. Like that's more the type of thing I'm thinking right now.
And the thing that I'll say to that is I agree with you. Like, for instance, you talk about the Kennard. I think that's a very creative idea. Do I know if the Grizzlies really look into doing it because they seem to just so much value the three in his shooting? Yeah. I don't know how likely it is, but I will say the Luke Kennard, Wendell Carter Jr. idea, it does make a ton of sense. We'll have to add probably some type of significant future asset, but if we could get Wendell Carter Jr. for Luke plus that asset, it would help the Magic tremendously because they're even worse off than, they got higher projections, I think, for this year with Banchero as well as, others, but he'll help out their shooting tremendously. But to your point, though, the other thing that I'll say about that 24 first is that this draft, while it may not necessarily have the top, just tier talent, there are plenty of bigs in this draft. And if you could find the right big on that 4-year rookie deal that can step up and be your sizable big, maybe your third option big going forward, that will do the Grizzlies so much better than having to trade for one at a much higher salary. So to your point, I think that there's a variety of different ways you can go. It's just a matter of perspective on where you place the emphasis on what makes the most sense going forward. But I definitely do think the Grizzlies are going to have to find in some way, shape, or form a significant complement to Jaren. I think that's a bigger need now than it was 6 months ago moving forward.
Yeah. Well, there's your little trade detour that we took. Well, let's get back to talking about this game, and we'll do it right after this short break. Hey there, Grits and Grinds listeners. Just want to tell you about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is a unique way to play fantasy sports for money. They have daily fantasy contests, also seasonal best ball contests, and they have higher or lowers where you can predict what your favorite players will do in any individual game. And now, for users in Tennessee and also Mississippi and Alabama, they will match your opening deposit up to $500 if you use promo code FBBF. For users in all other states and countries, they will match your opening deposit up to $100 with that promo code. But specifically, users in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama, they will offer $500 if you sign up now. Again, use that promo code FBBF or click the link in this episode's description. All right, I'm back with Shawn Coleman. The one statement I made about Marcus Smart not being additive yet to this roster, I feel like I've said that a couple times. For clarity, it's just, you would think on paper, if we have Desmond and Jaren, adding Marcus Smart to that would make it a good lineup. You got your 3/5 of the way to a great lineup. It hasn't worked so far. And then if you have John Morant, Desmond, Jaren, plus Marcus, that should fit great. And so far it hasn't. The cleaning the glass numbers so far when Marcus Smart's just been on the court this season, which hasn't been that many games. It's been for 4 wins. But the Grizzlies defense is good. Their ability to force turnovers has been great. And they foul a little bit too much. All that checks out. All that's as expected. The problem is their offense has been atrocious, just horrible. Their shooting's been bad. And they offensive rebound horribly. And so like the offense being just awful with Marcus Smart being on the court when he's played most of his minutes with our best players, that's highly concerning. We're still small sample size. That's super concerning. And even weirder, and this will lead us into some talk about the rotations in the Spurs game. Even weirder to me is Marcus Smart has not been the backup point guard. Like then in this game, in the first half, until he left with injury, it was Derrick Rose. In this game, you had 7 straight minutes where John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Marcus Smart were all off the court, which is weird to me. And the lineups that Grizzlies used in this time, I liked them. Okay. I actually liked the bench or the mainly bench lineups they were using. It was Derrick Rose, Luke Kennard, Vince Williams Jr., Santi Aldama, and then you had Jaren in there. That 5-man unit, to be clear, I like. They did a good job. However, see if you can follow my train of thought, Shawn. What if those Derrick Rose minutes were going to John Morant, Desmond Bane, and Marcus Smart? That seems a little, I like that lineup even better. And that's what we got in the second half.
100%. 100. And you see what happens, right? You see that he put it basically into a playoff lineup. You had your 5 starters, but you also had Santi Kennard and Vince. And last night, Keith, that's what stood out. What I believe Luke was a +16, Vince was a +13, Santi was a +12, 11 of 19 from the field, 6 of 14 from 3, 22 freaking rebounds from that trio. Hello.
Yes, sir.
It was exciting. So those 3 guys, I'm not necessarily saying they're an advantageous playoff rotation off the bench, but that is something that could be, I don't necessarily even know if I'll call it a strength, but at the very least, when you've got those 3 guys playing and the different rotations that you could put with the starters, you definitely can make it happen. But I agree with you 110%. If you've got John Morant, if you have Marcus Smart, and you have Desmond Bane, and you know that you are 80% likely to lose the second quarter with how bad we played in the second quarter this year, historically bad, mind you, there should be a Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, John Morant offense nearly at all times in that second quarter. So you've got parts of the rotation doing it, but you've got to have a capable offensive engine to make those parts work. And nothing against Derrick Rose himself. I think he's a great asset for this team in terms of who he is and in terms of his experience. But right now, the playing, and unfortunately, I think his body is just, kind of showing its limits right now. He should not be a part of this rotation in terms of being a go-to guy in that first to second quarter swing where we're struggling so badly. Get you an offensive engine in there with your bench minutes and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little bit bad that I keep like coming back to Derrick Rose, where it's like Derrick Rose played fine, and he's played fine when he's been in there. He's been bad at finishing, but okay. The whole Grizzlies team has been bad at finishing, basically. But like he hits a couple of mid-range jumpers in the first half. The offense is working just fine with him in there, but he's not as good as the other guys. And like you said, his body can't handle it. And I mean, of course, we knew that going in. Everyone in the NBA knew that. They're like, well, you're depending on him to play minutes. I don't think his body can handle it. So I hope he gets better. He had a thigh injury, couldn't play. But like you mentioned, that bench, those three guys off the bench, Luke, Santi, and Vince, that's all they played in the second half. They played 8 guys, 8-man rotation, playoff rotation, basically, for this comeback. Or wasn't a comeback. Well, I guess technically they fell on by 1. The Spurs had an 11-0 run at the start of the third quarter, but then the rest of the third quarter was delightful. It wasn't really close, putting it away. But I noticed, like you mentioned, like Santi. So Santi has that double-double off the bench, gets 11 rebounds, 13 points. Santi looks so much better, and I think it might be as simple as he was playing with other good players. You know, like these lineups were like, hey, it's whoever it was. It's Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Vince Williams Jr., Jaren, and Santi. That's an awesome lineup. And Santi, I think, like, he's going to look better playing with the better players. That goes back to the, like, quit doing the 10 deep. I mean, again, kudos to the coaching staff for not playing any of the other players, for starting the rotation. But like, I thought Santi looked really good. And a lot of that was because he was put in an advantageous position by playing with other good players.
So to your point, though, you're talking about Marcus Smart hasn't really made the impact that we had hoped he would with our 3 best players. And I think that Marcus Smart, in a lot of ways, is kind of perimeter version of Steven Adams. He's someone that you brought in to amplify your better players with the small things that he does, the extra passing, the screen setting, the small hustle plays, the defense. But he also is not someone that you're going to rely on when it comes to his shooting. Well, if you're starting a Marcus Smart along with a Bismack or an Xavier Tillman, you've got 2 non-shooters on the court that don't offer just a Steven Adams level of value as a non-shooter that you really need. So in that case, are you to the point to where we talk about Bismack, we start X? Where do you stand on starting Santi? I like the idea of him coming off the bench as that extra offensive plug and play where you need it. I like him in that concept. But if you're going to start Marcus Smart, it seems like that if we like the lineup of Santi and Jaren there, Marcus, Dez, as well as Santi and Jaren, you give up a little bit of defense perhaps, but we need good offensive starts. And I think Santi at the 4 and Jaren at the 5 or vice versa is the best way to do that.
Yeah, I am fine. I'm comfortable with starting Santi. I think it was last episode I did. Like my 2 cents, and it's probably not going to fly. My 2 cents was I would start Dez, Jaren with Vince and Tillman or Vince and Santi. I would do that. I think the rotation makes more sense if you're bringing Marcus off the bench. Of course, if Marcus can't play without John Morant, well, I mean, what's the point? Why is he here?
Yes.
But then, like you saw in this game, where I said this on social media, and I think people misinterpret it because it came out as my normal tone of sarcasm. Vince Williams Jr. played 12 straight minutes in the first half, and he might have the best cardio on the whole team, so it's fine. But like, that's a long stretch to play. He was playing well. He was doing a good job, but like, you can spread his minutes out a little bit better if you're not waiting until there's 2 minutes left in the first quarter to put him in for the first time. But I accept they're not going to benchmark it. They're not going to make Marcus Smart the 6th man, but even still 100%. I would be fine with him starting Santi Aldama at the very least. Like, whoever your starting center is, if it's Bismack or X, do the Keith Bogans thing. Like, let him play 4 minutes. I'm not talking about 6 minutes or 8 minutes. Let him play 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Pull him, yank him, get Santi in there, and then let's go. Let's start getting the good, let's start getting the good kind of offensive lineups. Like Santi and Jaren, traditionally, those lineups have been great, and the offense has been good. The defense has normally been good, and Santi has extreme limitations on defense. But at the very least, he's 7 feet tall. He picks up those defensive rebounds that other people seem immune to grabbing at times. So like, yeah, I'm all for giving Santi a little longer leash. I was happy to see him when he played 28 minutes in this one. So like, I think he's versatile enough where like, we should be playing him more minutes. And I know he's taking a lot off the table defensively, but like, I guess maybe I've had my fill of the Bismack minutes.
Yeah, and if you could get him to where he's shooting the corner three, like I put a couple of clips out there on Twitter when you were watching the highlights, but Desmond Bane's connection with Santi. Desmond Bane, in that first New Orleans game when Ja was back, the defense was so fixated on him. Santi was wide open in the corner for the three. Des made a great pass to him, and Santi made the shot, but Santi's just not been consistent. If Santi could ever, Santi is the perfect person to fill that the four guy in the three or in the corner three spot that Taylor Jenkins loves. He's the perfect guy to fill that. He's just got to make the freaking shot. I think more repetition helps. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the whole point is this, is that you saw what happened. And I know that we need to keep it's the Spurs in context. You saw how well the team played when you cut the rotation to 8 and you featured different lineups that used the strengths of Vince as well as Kennard as well as Santi. Go with that moving forward. Be creative with the lineups and go with it. By the way, Keith, I want to get your opinion. The Vince offensive rebound. We were up 74-61, but the Vince offensive rebound where he passed it back out to Kennard, did that not look like just a splitting image of Tony Allen? Like Vince has a lot of Tony Allen in his game, maybe with more purpose. I'm not
Vince
saying
is no, you got it. Vince is the I don't know what you want to call it. It's the reincarnation of Tony Allen. It is everything Tony Allen. We've seen
version,
we've seen some like vague, like, oh, this guy's Tony Allen like, and like we had some Melton briefs, like, oh, he's kind of Tony Allen. No. Just the appearance, the physical nature of the way he moves. Also, he's got the trick or treat Tony aspect. He had that turnover where he jumped in the air and like tried to maybe throw it to Ja and then landed. And I was like, if that's not the most Tony Allen play we've ever seen, I know Taylor Jenkins just benched him after that play, but that was the most Tony Allen thing I've ever seen. Tony Allen, my favorite player of all time, my favorite Grizzlies player of all time. No, Vince is there. This is what Tony Allen would be doing if he played now. He would be chucking 3-pointers just like Vince Williams is. But like Vince, like I was so relieved when his second 3-point attempt went in this game, because he was 4 out of 24 on threes in the previous 6 games. If he had missed that second 3-point attempt after missing his first 3-point attempt, he would not have played 12 straight minutes. He would have played maybe 6, 7, 8 minutes, would have gotten out of there. I was so relieved when that shot went in, and it was like winning a free game on like a arcade cabinet, where all of a sudden he's like, hey, you got a free life, man. You got to play 6 more minutes. And so, yeah, Vince making those 2 threes. He's absolutely Tony Allen once again. Let's hit a few more stats before we wrap up. You mentioned it earlier, but to clarify, Jaren Jackson Jr., big impact game with the defensive stats. He got those, 4 blocks, 3 steals. Want to make sure I get that right. Yeah, 4 blocks and 3 steals. It was the first game of the season where he's had at least 3 blocks and 3 steals. He had 5 such games last season. He has 10 career games with at least 3 blocks and 3 steals. That's second in franchise history behind Marc Gasol. Ja, we talk so much about the Grizzlies and don't even mention John Morant. It's funny. That's the sickness of the hardcore fan. John Morant had 26 points, had 10 assists, made 3 3-pointers, but also, I mean, to reemphasize the 7 straight points he scored, the one where he finally scored on Wemby, like Wemby blocked a shot the first time he drove at him, like they were going at it a little bit, and Ja had been very public and vocal about wanting to dunk on him. So the first time he scores, he hits that little left-hand shot where he hangs in the air forever. This is normally the play where he lands before shooting, which is not legal, but he did not. It was a legal layup, but then the next time down, gets him on that shifty shake crossover. Like Wemby was stunned. It's like you hit him with the stun gun from like he was pulverized standing there. Ja gets the dunk, should have been an and one. And then the next play, he hits that 3 where the defense goes way under. What were your thoughts, feelings, emotions when Ja strung this together?
Oh, it was phenomenal. And if I remember correctly, this happened later in the third quarter. This happened in the second half of the third quarter. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point that I'm getting at is that we saw Ja being Ja. Like what I mentioned as well on Twitter was the fact that the Spurs had that 11-0 run in the third to start the third quarter, but what did we see for the Grizzlies to counteract that? As soon as the Spurs went up 51-50, Ja came back and he hit Desmond with 2 shots. He was struggling trying to get back from the knee injury and whatever illness he's dealing with. But right after halftime, he probably was trying to get his feet back under him, but 3 straight assists in like a 60-second span to get us on a 7-0 run to respond to the Spurs. And then him taking over that scoring late in the third. What stands out to me, Keith, is that we finally saw a quarter where John Morant was the elite scorer and the elite playmaker, and he knew when to be each of them. And look what happens. Our offense takes off, we take over the game, and we're able to sit there and get the win. If we can get 2 or 3 of those spurts a game from John Morant, we've seen him in a few of the second halves right after he came back, but if we can get 2 or 3 of those spurts a game from John Morant, that's probably what's going to help us the most and being able to win games against teams that, we may not necessarily be able to win against. But that's what really stood out to me. The elite scoring, the elite playmaking when we needed it the most, that was the difference in the game.
Yeah, that and playing the Spurs, like you've said.
Exactly.
This was the Grizzlies' 12th straight regular season win over the Spurs, their 13th straight win against the Spurs if you include the play-in. That means they are 62% of the way to avenging the 1997 to 2002 Grizzlies, who lost 21 straight games against the Spurs. 3 more things. Let's hit these rapid fire. You mentioned the strong end to the first half, into the first half by the Grizzlies. Do you remember who was playing? Because this was a unit that's never been played before. It's something we maybe had dreamed about, talked about in the offseason of like, are they going to play all 4? I'm going to say 4 of these guys together. And they did for the first time.
I forget.
It was John Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, and Luke Kennard.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So they went small ball. Biz was the only big. They went super small ball with their best 4 guards all at once. The early returns playing the Spurs went great. They had this little run. So I thought that was very notable. Hadn't seen that lineup. If those 4 guys hadn't seen them play together, that worked out well.
One criticism of that, put Jaren in there. The reason I say that, if you look at the numbers, and this may be more noise than anything, but if you look at the numbers across the NBA, this is one of my favorite stats of the year, with how much we struggle in the second quarter. If you look at the players who have had 30 or more shots within the final 3 minutes of the first half this year in the NBA, Jaren has won the top 5 effective field goal percentages. So if you've got a perimeter lineup of Ja, Luke, Des, and Marcus Smart that are doing so well from 3, put Jaren in there to balance it out from 2, and you potentially could go on a 15-4, 15-3, 10-3 run to close out second half. So great to see, but put Jaren in there to see it work as well. So
another thing, I have to mention the Marcus Smart foul call that was challenged and overturned. However, during the process of the replay, they slapped him with a flopping tech. I say this was the best NBA refereeing moment I've ever seen. What was your take?
It was very, I don't know if ironic was the right word, poetic. It was very much.
It was just, you would say that?
It worked out the best way that it possibly could have. It absolutely did. Because especially with how, Marcus Smart is so, he's so happy about taking charges. What was the stat that you had where like he had more charges in his career than the Grizzlies?
No, it was the 2022 season. He took more charges than the Grizzlies whole team. He took more charges by himself than the Grizzlies whole team.
Yeah, and so it was just it was Marcus Smart himself, and such a contrast that he is to the NBA nowadays. He got the charge, and it was held up as the right call, but then he got the flopping call, and it's just like it's Marcus Smart being a player who probably is of an older era, trying to make it in today's game, and he's done such a good job, but he can't escape doing what he needed to do, but still getting the flopping call.
I love how mad the coaching staff was and Marcus was, and like Pete and Brevin were even a little bit mad. And I was just like, that was perfect. Of course that was flopping. We got a flopping level team. And honestly, like this is, I use this term referee roulette. Referee roulette is when you force the official to blow his whistle. You do something. You either throw yourself on the ground, you throw yourself into the defender, you fall over with the ball and lose it. You force the referee to blow their whistle. I call it roulette because you never know what you're going to get. Or maybe a little nicer term, it's like the Mario Kart little squares. Like you don't know what the box is going to be. Could be anything. And like Marcus Smart loves playing referee roulette. I hate referee roulette. I'm like, you don't know what the ref's going to call. That could be your 5th foul. What are you doing? Just play basketball. This one, the Grizzlies were winning. And I think I'm going to make this a firm rule. I might change it. I might amend it later. My firm rule is if we're winning, don't play referee roulette. Like, don't do a weird fall over turn. Like, he turned the ball over at the end of this game where I'm like, don't make the officials call something. Like, I feel like we've gotten lucky with the lack of flopping techs we've gotten this year. By the way, Vince Williams picked up his first flopping warning. He got fined $2,000. He's a flopper.
Somebody should have paid it. Somebody else needs to pay it. He's played good defense.
I'll pay it with my Christmas money, Sean. I got that lying around somewhere. Let me look on this desk. I'm sure I got $2,000 in loose bills.
I will say this though, if we're talking about referee roulette, if we're talking about making them call something, one thing that's been very fun to see this year is Jaren figuring out, well, if they're going to call me for every little bit of contact that I make on defense, what if I get physical on offense and they make the calls in my benefit? That's what's helped his offensive game go up a little bit as well. So
I agree.
It'll be interesting to see. But now, the thing that I will ask you, if I may, looked at the initial numbers of the lineup that, I'll be honest, I was a bit hesitant about this lineup. You and others really seem to be bought into it, and I get the benefits of it. The initial numbers of the Ja, Smart, Bane, Vince, Jaren lineup, 33 possessions, were a plus 3.6. Do you want to guess what our offense and defensive rating is with that lineup so far over 33 possessions?
I'm going to say it's bad offense, good defense.
Oh yes. Oh, okay. Definitely.
Okay. So let's go with 94 offense, 91 defense.
Sure. 73 offense, 70 defense.
You know what this reminds me of? I haven't said his name in actually I said his name earlier today. There were DeAnthony Melton playoff stats where everyone was mad that he was shooting 28%. Yeah. And I'm like, look at the team, offensive and defense. We have an 80 offensive rating, which I grant you is terrible. The other team has a 68 offensive rating. So we're winning. It's fine. No,
if everybody wants to complain, you're not hitting shots. Well, they're hitting shots less frequently than we are. So it works out well.
No, I like that, Sean. I like that 5-man lineup under my very basic analysis of those are my 5 best players. That might be controversial. Maybe Luke Kennard is a better player in a vacuum. Fit wise, I think those 5 fit together maybe better than anybody else.
Have that lineup out there for a 3 to 5 minute span. The Ja Smart, Bane, Vince, Jaren lineup, let them set the defensive tone, then insert Kennard somewhere on the perimeter. Yeah. Let them hit those 2 or 3 threes in a 2-minute time span. You've got the lead. We play well with the lead. Let's go, to your point.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you can't. I don't think you can play that lineup heavy minutes because you're slightly negating Vince's rebounding advantage when you put him at the 4. So it's not going to be a permanent fixture. It is something I'm fine with seeing though. In maybe a little bit more than we have so far.
And I don't mean to be critical of it. I just felt that those numbers were very fun to see.
Yeah.
But to your point, the defensive potential of that lineup with Ja's offense being there, once those players figure it out, I do definitely think it could be an advantageous lineup if it uses it in the right spots. And I'll finish with this. Where the coaching staff, what Taylor Jenkins did in the second half, where this needs to take off. Because here's the thing that I think that, unless a trade's coming, this is it. This is the talent that we have to work with. When we're talking about winning at the 60 to 65% rate that we need to in order to make the playoffs, this is the collection of players that we're going to do it with. So if you feel the best way for you to be able to do that is to limit your rotation to 8 players, well, then the next step is you maximizing the lineups with those 8 players that work the best. And that's where I think Taylor Jenkins needs to take away what he saw in the second half of the Spurs game and expand on it a bit. What works with Santi at the 4? What works in your ultimate defensive lineups if you were to put Vince and Smart and Jaren out there? Find the best lineup options and the best ways to use them during the game of those 8 players, and that's how you're going to win ball games. Can Taylor Jenkins do that? I think he can. Will he consistently do that? I think it's fair to question, but that's what I think is the biggest responsibility of Taylor Jenkins to get us where we need to get for the rest of this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the Grizzlies have a tough ask this second out of the back-to-back. I mean, they played 8 guys in the second half last night. You assume they're going to go a little deeper in the rotation against the Raptors on Wednesday night. The new look Raptors. Hopefully the Grizzlies can get that victory. Well, Shawn, always appreciate talking Grizzlies with you. I'm sorry we didn't get to the topic of who is better, the current Oklahoma City Thunder or the 2021-2022 Memphis Grizzlies. We'll have to do that another time. All you guys out there, go check out Shawn's work over at Bluff City Media, one of the best covering the Grizzlies. Shawn, I look forward to you coming on again sometime.
Hey, always a pleasure, Keith. My best to you in the start of the new year. Thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more winning basketball to talk about next time we talk.
You got it. Go Grizz.